time to get to Newcastle. They want to bring in a centre-back.
Yeah, afternoon, guys. Welcome to Newcastle and the River Tyne, the Tyne Bridge, which you can probably see just over my shoulder. And that is the place that Newcastle will hope that they can bring Marc Guehi in the next couple of days. We can break the news now that Newcastle have returned to Crystal Palace with a third offer for the England international defender. You'll remember we said last week that Newcastle had made a second bid for him in the region of £50 million. But it's my understanding that over the course of the weekend, Newcastle have gone back to the Eagles with a revised bid, an improved bid, I believe closer to the £65 million that Crystal Palace are asking for. And as I understand it, discussions, negotiations are underway. That has not been knocked back yet by Crystal Palace, so we will await the outcome for that one. So Eddie Howe desperate to bring in Marc Guehi, clearly because they've returned with that third bid, and we'll wait to see what Crystal Palace come back with.
Yeah, you say desperate to bring him in. Why are they so keen on Guehi in particular?
Well, look, he's an England international, isn't he? I think everyone saw over the summer just what he can bring to a side. Was part of that England defence that went all the way to the finals of the final of the Euros, should I say. And look, I think he's been pretty impressive for a long time now at Crystal Palace, particularly in the second half of last season when Palace rose up the Premier League table under their new manager, Oliver Glasner. And, of course, it would be another player who knows the Premier League, who's an international player, and I think crucially as well, knows some of the Newcastle players within that squad. He's quite close with Anthony Gordon, who, of course, was away in the summer with England as well. They came through the youth ranks together for the national team. And also Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall, who he was alongside at Chelsea. And without doubt, he's a class player, isn't he? I mean, £65 million is the price on his head from Crystal Palace. Any central defender with that price tag on his head, you would suggest they're a very, very good player. Newcastle looking to add numbers in defence. They're a little bit short, particularly in the right-hand side of defence. They only really have Fabian Schär in that position. But crucially, Guehi can play right centre-back and left centre-back as well. So he would give them that option on either side. And as Eddie Howe said on Friday, I spoke to him after that match, their friendly match against Girona that they won 4-0 on Friday night. He said, look, it's really difficult to try and improve this Newcastle United team, particularly the starting 11. He said there's only a small pool of players that can come in and do that. Clearly, they've identified Guehi as one of that small pool of players. They've made a first bid, a second bid. Both have been rejected by Crystal Palace. That third offer has been placed over the weekend. Crystal Palace are mulling over that. And as I said a moment ago, negotiations between the two clubs are underway. Newcastle will hope to reach a compromise with their Premier League counterparts and hope that they have Guehi in this week in time for the Premier League kick-off on Saturday, where they host Southampton at St James's Park with a 3 o'clock kick-off on Saturday. Will Marc Guehi be there? We'll wait and see.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Keith. Great to get some breaking news during the show. Dan, Marc Guehi, is he someone that is going to improve Newcastle?
Yeah, I mean, I think Keith mentions there their defensive kind of concerns at the moment because, as he mentioned, Fabian Schär is their only real option at the moment because Sven Botman, of course, has an ACL injury. He's not expected to return until the end of the calendar year. Then you look at other players that Eddie Howe's been playing in that position. It's the likes of Emil Kraft and Dan Burn, who are both fullbacks by trade as well. And actually, look at his age. I mean, he's the same age as Sven Botman. So I think planning for the future, you know, that would probably be the partnership Newcastle would look to build their team around. I think just finally on Guehi, what 12 months has been for him. You know, he started last season pretty well, but at the end of last season, he missed 12 Premier League games with a knee injury. And then we saw, as Keith mentioned, you know, he's one of England's best players. If anything, he's very unlucky not to make team of the tournament. So if Newcastle are able to get a compromise with Crystal Palace, it would undoubtedly be one of the signings of the window, and it would absolutely strengthen Newcastle's chances this season.
Yeah, interesting what he was saying there, Eddie Howe, to Keith, saying there's only a very small pool of players that can improve Newcastle. And you know, Guehi obviously was very impressive in the Euros, but you know, you wouldn't say that before that he'd made like a massive mark for himself. So, I mean, what's your gut feeling? Because they've also got Botman to come back, right? So is he going to be starting alongside Botman in an ideal world if they're both fit?
I think he'd be an excellent signing. I think he is so calm. You know, the mentality is so important at this level. When you're talking about that elite level and where Newcastle want to go to, he showed at the Euros, you know, he can perform at that highest level. So I think somebody you could build a defensive line around in years to come. Yes, it's a lot of money, but that's fine. I think that's the kind of money you have to pay if you want to make those big signings. And as Newcastle found last season, you do need that depth because they had so many injury problems. The game is changing. You know, nobody is really backing down when it comes to this international calendar. You know, FIFPro have said that they want concessions, but it isn't happening. You know, UEFA aren't backing down, FIFA aren't backing down. So you're going to need numbers and you're going to need quality, and he would provide both of those. So I think it's smart. I think that's what Newcastle need to do.
How about for Palace, Flex? If he goes, Elise's already gone, Eze is still there, Joachim Andersen, Fulham are interested in him. So, you know, you could potentially lose 3 of your 4 key players. Is that a bit of a concern?
Yeah, I think initially, straight off the bat, that is certainly a concern. When you look at how integral the players you just mentioned are, and including Eze as well, who at the minute is still. But if you are a Palace fan, you would really be concerned. But at the same time, it depends whether you're a pessimist or an optimist, because the fees that are being brought in for these players are truly transformational for a club like Palace. To get, you know, the best part of £50 million for Elise, the best part of £60 million it looks like for Marc Guehi. That's a lot of money to reinvest into the squad. And if they do manage to keep hold of Eberiche Eze as well, and okay, Anderson is a significant outgoing as well, they've got resources there if they can get this deal done as quickly and as smoothly as possible to go into it. And they had a taste last season of what it's like without these players. You know, Marc Guehi had some injuries last season. Elise has quite a few injuries as well, and Eze. So it's not like they're foreign to this idea that those players aren't going to be there. And I think Crystal Palace fans as well, I think they know that these players will reach a ceiling respectfully at the right time, and will wish these players well, as long as they get, like the chairman always says, as long as they get what's right for these players. You saw Elise sign a new deal last year when it looked like he was going to go to Chelsea. No, he stayed to sign a new deal. They got another year out of him, and now look. And I think with Marc Guehi, it's a natural progression. So I think, yes, on one hand, it is a bit concerning, but at the same time, there's room for optimism because they're getting the right fees for these players.
Well, if they do sell Guehi, do you think that means then that they need to keep hold of Anderson? Because if you sell your 2 senior centre-backs, that's quite a big change to a side, isn't it, going into a new season?
You would think so, and I can't imagine it's what Oliver Glasner would have signed up for. I think he accepts, and that is the model for clubs that aren't in the top 6. Ultimately, you're buying players at a low price at the start of their career, players with potential, knowing that with most of these clubs outside the top 6, that you will sell them on for a big profit. And that's what Brighton have done so brilliantly over the course of the last 2 or 3 years. And that looks like what Crystal Palace are doing here, because they signed Marc Guehi from Chelsea, had a brilliant season before that at Swansea. Let's bear in mind, they reached the playoff final. They came so close to reaching the Premier League under Steve Cooper, a really young side with the likes of Conor Gallagher spent some time on loan there as well. And it just feels like the right time for Marc Guehi as well, considering what he's done over the course of the last few years, especially at Crystal Palace. And we saw that with England too. I think it would be sad because Oliver Glasner's come in, huge amount of excitement. Let's bear in mind how they finished last season. They won 6 the last 7 matches, kept a clean sheet at Anfield, beat Manchester United 4-0 at home as well. So it felt like there was a real momentum going into this coming season. Though, if you end up losing some of these key players, then for Glasner, who there was interest from Bayern Munich in the summer, he must be thinking, this is not what I signed up for at all. But knowing full well, when there are players like that and you can get that sort of money for them, as a club of the size of Crystal Palace, eventually they might go on and try and become a side challenge towards the top of the Premier League. But at this moment in time, that's simply what a club like that has to do to survive.
I think Glasner's a realist, though, and a pragmatist as well. If you go back to when he was at Wolfsburg, so before he was at Frankfurt, he actually got Maxence Lacroix and John Brooks together, who individually were decent defenders, but he made a really good pair and he developed them. And that was the bedrock of them qualifying for the Champions League against the odds that season. Lacroix is a player that I think it wouldn't surprise me if Glasner, taps Palace on the shoulder and says, there's a guy that we can bring in, because he does make mistakes. He has been sent off a few times, but he's quick, he's physical. I've always thought there's real talent there, and if Glasner could work with him again, I think there's a deal to be done there potentially. I think he's somebody who's developed centre-backs really well in his coaching career already.
Yeah.